who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teal. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teal, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here today for Caregiver Solutions Info Show. We have another wonderful program for you. If you're a caregiver, if you're an adult taking care of another adult who can't take care of themselves any longer, and you find yourself in that position, then this show is exactly for you, because it was created for caregivers to learn about caregiving and also with an emphasis on dementia. As people get older, we get frail. Sometimes we have that confusion, that memory loss, and dementia is a big topic. And so many caregivers never have dealt with any kind of dementia before, like Alzheimer's disease. So this show is exactly for people to learn not only about dementia, but caregiving, and not only how to take care of others, but also how to take care of yourself. So we have experts on this program that really encompass all areas of life, from social, financial, legal, physical, to help you along the way, because it's not easy being a caregiver. It's probably one of the hardest things you'll ever do. If you've ever talked to a caregiver, you know, they might say, oh, everything's fine. But deep down and underneath and behind the scenes, everything is not fine. And so this show was created for that purpose. And so today we have a great guest. You're going to really, really enjoy her. Let me ask you this question first. So if you're a caregiver and you're feeling all the aspects of caregiving, being tired, being overwhelmed, being anxious, being frustrated, right? All of those things. And because we know, and it's been proven, that stress creates problems in our body, emotionally, physically, mentally. And maybe you've gone to the doctor and maybe he's prescribed some pills for you, and maybe it has helped and maybe it hasn't. Maybe you just don't feel right. Maybe you just can't get back to feeling normal. Maybe it's just not working for you, and you've been to doctor with different kinds of problems and conditions. So my question is, have you ever thought about trying something maybe untraditional, maybe something out of the box, maybe something different that could possibly help you? Well, today we're going to be talking about that, because my guest is a special doctor. It's so exciting to be able to have her with me today, because I understand her type of medicine. I've actually experienced it myself with another physician in this type of treatment. And so today I'd love to have you enjoy my guest. Her name is Dr. Maya Sarkissian. And thank you for being here, Doctor. Can I just shorten it and say Dr. Maya?
Dr. Maya's fine.
I appreciate you being here. Now, Dr. Maya is a lot of things. She is a licensed acupuncturist. She specializes in Oriental, Eastern type of medicine. She is also specializing in integrative nutrition. She's a practitioner in a lot of different modalities that we're going to learn about today that are not what you traditionally would see when you go to your regular general practitioner. So this is a whole different mindset. And so today we're going to explore what that means and what it's all about. So again, Dr. Maya, thank you for being here. We have a lot to talk about today, actually. But the first thing that I want to ask you, because I have just said to everybody about non-traditional medicine, which people would say that would be the Western culture of medication, medicine, the way we treat people, normally what people think. But there's a different way. And so I want to ask you, what's the difference between what we would normally think as regular Western type medicine and then your Eastern or Oriental type medicine?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. I'm very honored to be here.
Thank you.
And help your audience. I think that caregivers to adults need special care, need a lot of advice and support. So I'm excited to share my expertise there.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm. And we are in the right place for that in terms of South Florida.
Absolutely.
So the difference between Western, or I'll say contemporary medicine and holistic medicine is that contemporary medicine exists for not a long time. So maybe 100 plus years, something like this. And it is heavily based on the scientific research on biochemistry and on something that keeps developing. Holistic medicine is based on thousands and thousands of years of experiential research. And lately, it also is being based on a scientific research because herbs and acupuncture even and all of this is being researched and scientifically proven and accepted more and more in the traditional contemporary medicine form. So the biggest difference is that in holistic medicine, we practice to treat the whole body, the whole person, not only physical body or even parts of the physical body, but entire body in its entirety, plus mental and emotional health as well, and even spiritual, like what is the meaning of life, that connection. And so we do it simultaneously at the same time. So that will be a biggest difference. In contemporary medicine, they usually specialists, they specialize just on one organ or function. And there I see problems there of a disconnect between different doctors, different specialists, and person and a patient. Another big difference is that holistic medicine is what we call the heart-based. It's always us together as a team, me and a patient, we work together. There is a relationship there. In contemporary medicine, it is very rare. It exists, but it's very rare. So that's probably a major difference that we can see.
So a couple things, what you said. When we go to the doctor because we have a problem, and it might be a heart problem, mm-hmm. So that doctor's going to concentrate on the heart. But if we have a bad knee, that doctor's not going to be able to help us mm-hmm. because that might be for somebody like an orthopedist, right, to help us with our knee. Mm-hmm. And so it sounds like it's disjointed because people can have a lot of different doctors specializing in a lot of different things, and they're all treating you for something different and maybe even at the same time. I have a friend right now who's going through that. So she's going to see doctor after doctor after doctor for different things. They might sort of be related, but we don't know yet, right? Mm-hmm. Because these different doctors may or may not be talking to each other. Mm-hmm. And one's giving her medicine for this condition, another's giving her medication for another condition, and they can't really figure out like the root cause. Mm-hmm. So to me, what it sounds like you're saying is that your type of practice gets to the root cause and hopefully kind of addresses all of it at the same time to see if even those problems are interrelated. Is that kind of right?
You summarized it completely. Thank you so much for that. Yes, it's a root cause. And a funny thing that you said about heart and knees, because in Chinese medicine, they're kind of the same.
heart and knees are...
It's in Qigong. Qigong is an energy medicine of Chinese medicine. It's energy modality. And yes, they consider it to be like a representation of the heart in the body.
The knee and the heart. Well, hey, I had no idea what I was saying, but apparently...
Well, you know what you're saying.
But apparently
no
it was right? It was a good thing. So that is a whole new concept for somebody.
Yeah.
And they don't think about that because, they say, well, I eat, I need to eat well, I need to sleep well, I need to, exercise. And if I do all of these things, I should be fine. But, as we age and also as caregivers are caring for somebody and that's taking a toll on them, things happen. So I think that people these days, as we get older, there's a joke about, as you get a certain age, you're going to see a lot of different doctors that end in ology, right? Or ologists, like the audiologist, the gastroenterologist,
right.
the cardiologist, right? So all these ologists, right, that we're going to see. It would be wonderful if we could see one practitioner, one doctor who could kind of take care of us, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, and have it all. And I think that is what is amazing, because I've actually experienced the same thing in my life several years ago, where I went to a physician, a practitioner in Oriental medicine, where other doctors kept pushing pills to take care of whatever it was that was ailing me, and it just didn't really take care of the problem. It just kind of took care of the symptoms, but it didn't actually take away the problem, right?
Yeah, and in metabolic conditions like a diabetes, arthritis, what we call the condition of body metabolism, and they're chronic medical conditions like that, there is no cure by Western medicine. The people who take metformin and insulin and all, it's not a cure, and doctors know that, so they cannot be healed from that. They can be, their blood tests will be better, but that's because they are on constant support. But there is always a root cause for that. And when a patient who went to multiple different doctors and now totally confused, or undiagnosed, underdiagnosed, misdiagnosed, and they don't know what's going on with them because symptoms keep coming, they keep accumulating, then something else hurts. It's usually complicated. I'm glad when it's not like that, but it is usually like that. So it's very important to understand not only where it's coming from, which is investigation. I'm sometimes like a medical detective. So I'm trying to find what is the root cause, when it started, how it's developed. And I am creating a timeline of different things that started happening since childhood. And then I share it with the patients and I say, well, look at this. This is a year and this, and the patient looks at it and say, oh my goodness, that's an interesting observation. So
you're relating experiences in that person that could affect their body, their
experiences, traumas, emotional traumas, physical traumas, symptoms that were cured with medication, allergies that went away, something they ate that didn't agree with them, but they keep eating it. So stuff like that. And there's usually a timeline there. And then also simultaneously, I'm thinking what lifestyle changes we need to do to start working kind of holistically on the whole, sometimes I say all this mess, that's happening. Right. So yeah, it is kind of it's not a one-stop shop, as they say, but at least I provide thorough diagnostics. And I don't do it only with a holistic medicine approach, but also with functional medicine, which is a modern medicine. I would say.
Wait.
Yeah.
Now okay. We've got some terminology here. We need to clarify because first we're talking about Eastern, Western medication. Then we're talking about contemporary versus the holistic. Okay, so you just explained that, but now you're throwing in functional medicine.
Yeah,
isn't it expected that all medicine should be functional?
I am expecting that, but it's not happening.
So
Not yet.
So explain what you mean by functional medicine.
Okay, so functional medicine looks at the body rather than organs, separate organs, as a body functions, and that all the organs and functions are interconnected. For example, if something is happening with your hormones, your endocrine system, then definitely something will be affecting your immune system and your nervous system. And if something happening with your nervous system, for example, you have anxiety, depression, it will affect your hormones and that will affect your immune system. So that's like an example. But everything that's happening in your body will be affecting other organs and other functions. So that is sort of the idea of what functional medicine is. So we're looking at body functions and interrelations. And it is somehow approach of holistic medicine. I think functional medicine came from holistic medicine. It just was happening about 25, 30 years ago. It just started blooming.
Okay.
And some doctors switch to that or get trained to that. Not many, but there's an interesting community of functional medicine doctors. Medical doctors trained in the Western medicine, they keep more medicated approach. And holistic doctors like I am, like acupuncturists, some chiropractors do that too. We still keep a holistic approach, and I think it's more organic to have a holistic approach, holistic base approach, plus functional medicine, which is testing, specialized, very expanded, thorough testing of body functions.
So let me ask you this. Does it have to be either or?
Mm-mm.
Can someone really benefit from having functional medicine and traditional medicine at the same time?
It depends, but yes, everything is on an individual basis. We are in the era of personalized medicine because science allows us to do that now, even scientifically, with the Western medicine. We can have highly personalized and highly precise approach. And that is a future. We are front runners for the future, doing whatever we are doing with functional medicine and holistic approach. It is definitely possible. And I have patients who take medication and they come to me and they want to know what else they can do or how we can investigate what's going on with them. And based on their symptoms, on their complaints, I can suggest some functional medicine approach in addition to whatever they're doing. So we find what it is that they are taking medication for.
So because the holistic way is fairly new in the grand scheme of things, when it first started being practiced, right? And
Do you mean functional or holistic?
The-
Holistic is not new.
well, the one where the one where you're using the herbs and you're using the acupuncture
Yeah.
and you're just
That's old.
you're using all that, right? But when that first started and before it kind of got caught on, because I think now after we've been hearing about this more and people are starting to hear a little bit more about it and experiencing it more, but when it first got started, wasn't there sort of like a taboo against it, and some people even thought maybe it was like voodoo type of medicine? I've heard that before because it's like that sounds hokey, right? Because it's so different, it's so hokey. So how has it evolved and what has caused it to get to the point now where it's more acceptable?
Well, I can speak more about Chinese medicine because that's what I practice. And we are talking about also United States, right? That's
Right.
where acupuncture became, I think the first state where acupuncturist was licensed was either New York or California, I don't remember. And they were always people who completely would go there, especially Asian descent people and some people from not Asian descent. So I think what started happening that people got frustrated with their questions not being answered and their symptoms are being masked and having side effects from medication. So people became disheartened with the mechanical approach of Western medicine and not personalized approach. Because when you go to a holistic medicine practitioner, we talk to you, about your life, about what's bothering you, and that is almost like a medical psychology.
Yeah,
It can be. So this is what I meant, a heart-based approach. And when certain people, like we'll say influencers, when influencer catch that and something good happens with them, for example, they went to China, they had a heart attack, they had an acupuncture, and they miraculously got better in a few days, and they bring it back to the West, it's a big deal because they talk about it from the TV screen, from Opera Show, from Dr. Oz, and now a lot of people know this.
Right.
So it's an influencer thing. Also, for example, in our army, there is a there's a modality called battlefield acupuncture, and that is a ear acupuncture that's done in the army, in the U.S. Army. It's very common. It's happening all the time. Also, acupuncture is done in detoxification clinics for the detoxification, substance abuse. So it's when something like somebody experiences it and say, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna bring it to my entire, patient base or my audience." And then some research is being done in China. There is a lot of scientific research is being done with fMRIs and MRIs and all of that.
Well, I have to tell you, I am a believer because I have experienced it. And because I've experienced it, I tell everybody about it. So I think, a lot of word of mouth and people that and you're bringing it, I'm bringing it to my circle of influence, to, people that I know, because I had gastro reflux, right? Really, really bad. And the doctors were just throwing medicine, pills at it. And then it got worse and throw more pills at it and got worse. Until I found someone like you, and I was like a miracle. I mean, I said, "You cured me," right? And it was amazing to me because it wasn't more medicine; it was treating the root cause, right? What we talked about, and in my case, it's what they call healing your gut, right?
Yes.
And
exactly.
so, talk a little bit about healing your gut, because that's kind of like a buzz thing now. But what does that really mean?
We are physically, let's talk about physical level. Physically, we are a collection of microorganisms. We have a whole huge microbiome in our body. It's a microbiome. It's like bacteria and microbes, and most of them are friendly, and they do stuff for us. We have microbes on our skin. We have it in every part of the body. We have like a colonies of them. I mean, it might sound gross to somebody, but you couldn't live without them.
Right.
They're like living for you. They digesting your food, and they keeping you healthy. It's immune system, all of this. We could not survive. It would be like a bubble, we would be in a bubble. And when there is a disturbance in this microbiome universe of us, due to excess antibiotics, for example, some maybe genetic food sensitivities. Now we have genetically, we can be gluten sensitive and lactose sensitive, coffee sensitive. So there is a knowledge about that. So if there is any kind of a disturbances in your gut microbiome and your digestive, because your digestion starts from the mouth and ends with, what. So
like
it's
IBS or something like that?
Anything can be a microbiome disturbance. So when microbiome disturbed, your pH level, which is acidity and alkalinity level, it can be disturbed as well. Probably was in your case too, because that can create a gastric problems. And
like the extra acid.
Exactly. That's when your stomach becomes more alkaline, and it has to be acidic. And then, the medicine would be taking more alkaline stuff, and that creates a lot of problems.
Right.
Like PPIs are not our friends.
And
at
side
all.
effects eventually.
And it's like there are a lot. Like PPIs, it's one of the things I can talk about a lot. And that creates digestive problems. There's disturbances, and taking medications on a chronic basis, on a long-term basis. There's nothing wrong with medication.
Like 20 years.
Right. So
Yeah.
nothing wrong with medication. It is designed to get you out of trouble. So it is a short-term solution. While you're getting out of trouble, investigate why you got into trouble in the first place. So that's what we do, because, okay, you are in trouble. Let's see what maybe we can substitute something, change your lifestyle a little bit, get you out of it, and then investigate. Why did it start and how to avoid that? So that is a personalized medicine. So the healing the gut would be to restore the proper function of your entire digestive system, balance your first of all, find out the cause of it. And that can be functional medicine testing, can be questioning on the symptoms and figuring out what it is. In Chinese medicine, we look at your tongue, we check at pulses. So all of it, skin color, there are so many different diagnostic methods I do in my clinic. And then find out what are the imbalances, what are the disturbances, and then healing them according to what they are and who the person is as well. The level of issues, it is, if you are very sick, if you are not very sick, if you're young, if you're old, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and like you said, it is customized to each person.
Absolutely.
And so
Has to
when
be.
I went through it with that, I completely had no medication anymore and got rid of the symptoms, and life is good now.
Oh, I'm so happy for
yeah, I
you.
know. So
Yeah.
I love it, and I share with everybody. This is so interesting. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to have more with Dr. Maya, and we're going to be talking about how she can help caregivers who are having their own set of symptoms and problems. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teal, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
We're back now, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor. Arden Courts Memory Care Communities is a leader when it comes to assisted living for people with memory loss. Arden Courts has about 50 plus different locations throughout the United States, and all of them are memory-specific assisted livings. They are a great resource for caregivers. They're a great resource for caregivers' loved ones who are actually suffering from some type of dementia, Parkinson's disease, vascular dementia, Alzheimer's disease. And so Arden Courts is a great resource. And because you are listening or watching this program today, they want to give you this free book to help you. It's called The 36-Hour Day. It's a great resource for caregivers. It talks specifically about caregiving. It talks about tips and challenges that caregivers need and things that they face and how to resolve them. It gives a lot of great information and definitions. And the book is absolutely free just for the asking. And all you have to do to get this book is send an email, and that email address is delray@arden-courts.com. That's DELRAY at Arden, ARDEN, -courts, COURTS.com. Give them your name, address, telephone number. Tell them that you heard about the free 36-hour day book offer on the Caregiver Solution Info Show, and they'll be very happy to mail a book directly to you. I highly recommend this book. If you don't have it, it's a wonderful book to have, to read from beginning to end, or just pick it up when you have a specific question and find the answer. So I hope that you get this book right away, and hopefully it will help you along your caregiving journey. So tonight, my special guest is Dr. Maya. She is a wonderful person, not only professionally, but personally. She's a great person, and she is talking about how to heal the body, not just the body, the mind, the spirit. And she specializes in functional medicine, oriental medicine, acupuncture, and we're talking about how this type of treatment or therapy, treatment modalities can help a person where maybe normally traditional medication may not. And so we've been talking a lot about how the differences between the two and what they can do for us. But I want to go a little more specific now with caregiving. So I know in your practice, do you see caregivers that come to you and they have issues, and maybe you've discovered that a lot of their physical or emotional issues are related to their caregiving?
Yes. Given that my practice is in South Florida, in Boca Raton, then yes, absolutely. And I didn't know it was from Arden Court. I spoke for Arden Court. I actually was a guest speaker there.
Wonderful.
Wonderful facility.
Thank you.
And I've seen the patients there, and of course they all had caregivers before they got to Arden Court.
Right.
And they still go there every day. Some of them, and a lot of them, I think.
So if you see caregivers come into your practice, what are some of their major complaints when they come to see you?
There are things that they complain about, and there are things they don't complain about. So that is a difference between caregiver and not caregiver, because the major complaint is exhaustion. But the challenge there is that caregivers minimize their complaints. And that is challenging because they say, well, I have a little this, a little that. And I think that is because they feel so responsible, and they look at the people they care about as such an important job to do, that whatever they have is not as important. And this way they care about themselves and think that they're gonna just handle it themselves. It's not that important after all. Like, look, this person needs all of it, and my little pains and my little depression and my little fatigue is nothing.
Discount about
completely
themselves.
discount themselves, discount their time, their identity, their level of energy, their pain. So I kind of have that my challenge there is to bring it to the adequate level and say, well, tell me from 0 to 10, at some point, confuse them a little bit so they are present, because they're very often not present with me or with somebody else, because their mind, when they are not with a person they care for, their mind is there. So they're like divided. And that can be a challenge for them. So exhaustion, depression. With Alzheimer patients, caregivers, I see grief. And that grief is about, I had this person before. I had my husband or I had my wife. I had both kind of caregivers as my patients. And they are not them anymore. They're different people. They don't recognize me. They don't behave like they used to. I don't feel I am married anymore to this person. And it's a tremendous guilt. So it's a guilt, grief and guilt.
So these feelings that people are having that are caregivers that come to you, and the grief and the guilt and the feelings of being overwhelmed and stressed, how does that affect them physically and emotionally?
Oh, it's a tremendously exhausting to feel like this all the way. Physically, just by that, its immune system goes down. And there can be hormonal imbalances there. Migraines are very common, migraines. Body pain, like shoulders tension, TMJ pain, lower back pain. And again, I'm saying that they minimize it. They say, okay, well, I have headache. I'm like, how often? Well, every day, twice a day, something like that, because it's stress, and stress makes everything worse if not starting something as well. It affects it by, like, when they minimize it, it progresses. So when you don't address something, it will progress. Sometimes they don't eat correctly. They don't eat right because they don't have time. One more thing is caregivers forget to ask for help. They feel guilty. They have to ask for help. And they try to do everything themselves. And very often they're the same age as maybe a little younger or a little older. In a case of my patient caregiver and his wife, he was 10 years older than her. And he tried to do everything by himself.
Yeah, it's impossible, really.
It is impossible. And they got to hear it from somebody that it's okay to give themselves permission to find somebody adequate to help them. And it can be challenging. I understand. Especially they love this person and they want the care for them that they think only they can give them.
Right. Right. And sometimes they become martyrs, to do that. And because sometimes they don't want help and they think they can do it themselves. And so they're just really depleting themselves, and they're not really there eventually for the person they're caring for because they're deteriorating themselves
And it builds
emotionally and
resentment.
physically. So that being said, let's say they went to their regular doctor and, he prescribed some sleeping pills, right? Because you're not sleeping, or maybe something to calm them down because they were anxious. And maybe, they don't like taking pills, or maybe it's not working for them, or maybe there's side effects, and somehow they ended up in your office. So how would you first treat or start to make a plan for somebody in that kind of situation?
Well, first I will have conversation with them. My first appointment is 90 minutes. So it's an hour and a half.
It's a long time.
It is, but it goes so quickly because we talk about what's happening with the patient on a very personal level, not only symptoms and physical and emotional. People start talking, and this is sometimes what this person needs to do to actually talk about everything, vent about everything that's bothering them, vent about medications that don't help, vent about doctors who don't care, vent about the spouse that does changed, so vent about all of that. And I listen. So I listen and I pay attention. I make notes of what can be an entry point there. What can we do? Do we need to address and maybe test something? If that is a gut-related issues, what do they eat? So I make a lot of notes, and then I create a plan. I create pre-diagnostic plan, diagnostic plan, and based on this, I create a treatment plan. Very important thing to do for caregivers in my practice is to get them on a schedule. Because if people who are not tied to caring for somebody, we can make a schedule, like call me and we're going to make an appointment. Here, I encourage caregivers to actually create a schedule for themselves in their lives that will allow time for themselves, to care about themselves, to do whatever it is. It's an appointment with me, say once a week. It may be a massage, it may be something else, but it has to be in their calendar scheduled. That has to be, otherwise just time flies.
Yeah, and you forget about it, and it's not important, but if it's on your calendar, people usually pay attention to that.
Yeah, and I always work on creating priorities. So priority work. So what's the most important in your life? Analogy can be, it's like airplane analogy. First, I put an oxygen mask on you, then put an oxygen mask on something next to you. Right. Because if you're going to get sick, then things going to get worse.
Right.
So, and the awareness that something developed over time So we got to have a time also to correct that, whatever was developed, like symptoms, emotions, physical stuff. So we have to redo it.
Yeah.
And it's going to take time. So that's very important to do. And to put themselves first, because the guilt of caregivers that they put their loved ones as number one, it's a very human thing to do. And for me, I sometimes feel guilty when I say, nope, you have to put yourself first. But it has to be done like that. So otherwise...
Well, because we're taught that we should be there for other people, and that it's, you know, it's...
especially women.
Right, and be there and do for others, and, you know, don't be self-centered, right?
Yeah, and self-centered is not, you know, yeah, it's a connotation, like being egotistic, being selfish. And I always say selfish and self-caring are two very different things. You have to be self-caring, and then you will be able to help out of you being resourceful if you know.
So it's not selfish to give self-care.
No, it's not. It's essential
Right.
to give self-care.
Yes.
And not necessarily for caregivers. It's for all of us is like that. And for different stages in life, like I call different seasons, different ages, we have different needs for self-care, different ways of self-care, and different priorities. So life changes, circumstances change. So we have to not to forget what we did, so that doesn't apply anymore. We have to create a new way of life that will allow us to be healthy, physically and emotionally.
Wow, good stuff. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more from Dr. Maya. Stay tuned.
Feelings of depression, isolation, and frustration are common among persons living with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's common among those who care for them, too. It takes a lot of patience and courage. It also takes knowing when you can no longer do it alone. At Arden Courts, memory care is all we do. Talk to us. We know. We understand. We can help. Don't let guilt keep you from making the right decision. Visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines.
You are listening to your host, Marcia Teal, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
We're back, and my special guest today is Dr. Maya, and she is a functional medicine doctor, integrative, oriental, specializing in acupuncture, specializing in a different type of care other than what we might think of as contemporary or traditional. And it's been so amazing speaking with you and learning about how someone that practices what you do can really treat the whole person, not just the different parts of our body, but mind, body, spirit, and it's all integrated, right? And that's what it's all about. So we were talking about caregivers before the break specifically, and caregivers do go through a lot of stress, and guilt, grief, all those emotions that you talked about, and they come to you and you help them with that. Can you think of an example of maybe a caregiver who has come to you with their specific complaint or ailment, and how you treated them and how their life got better?
Yes. So my first patient, not first in my practice, but my first caregiver patient, a beautiful woman, absolutely. And she was in love with her husband. It was, I think, his second marriage. And he was older than her, maybe 15 years older or so, and he got Alzheimer's. And she was grieving. So she came for me specifically for grief. And because she could not recognize him anymore, and she was so much in love with him, that was heartbreaking. I did not practice any medicine with her, no integrative medicine. She came to me for that. So I practiced something called neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, and neuroemotional technique. It's the way how you can reprogram your mind and your outlook to life, your perceptions, in order to get the outcome you want.
Really?
Yeah.
This is fascinating.
Yeah, it is actually a very effective neuroemotional technique, something that I do very often.
Ooh.
And
Tell me
neurolinguistic
more.
programming I use for peak performance coaching and helping people to get successful.
We're all ears.
Change behaviors, change, limiting beliefs and stuff like that. So I helped her with using that. So to change her, anything you want to change in life, you can do only two things. You can change either context, actually change the thing, or you can change a meaning of it, or what's happening. Often we cannot change context. So we have to change what does it mean.
What it means to us.
What it means to us, right? So for her, that was a meaning in whatever was happening with her. So it meant that she was alone. It meant that she lived with a person she doesn't recognize anymore, that he was disregarding her, that he was mean to her. So all of that, it was a meaning to her. So she felt hurt and abused, even though she knew that he was sick and that he was not there. And sometimes he could recognize her and he would cry. So that was hard. So I helped her to redefine how she looks at things and through that, to get help, to forgive herself for feeling that towards him. So when she forgave herself, she did not feel like this towards him anymore. So she developed more compassion when she changed the frame of her thinking about the whole situation. And so her behaviors changed, so her identity changed. She had an identity in that marriage as being married to this very successful, wonderful man who loves her, and all of a sudden it doesn't exist anymore. So who is she now? She's abandoned. And we worked on that to change who she is now, that she's strong. And now, even though she's married, she got to behave like a single lady but still, with her husband. And that helped her a lot. So the anger went away and the grief went away. And she got so much better. I think it took us maybe 6 months or so of weekly sessions. And then I haven't seen her for a few years, maybe in 7 years or so. I met her in dancing social event, and she was so happy. And she said, yeah, he passed away, and I just feel it. And she said, you helped me so much. And she introduced me to her friends. And she said, now I have a wonderful life and I dance and I have friends. And so all of that. She was just very cheerful person.
Wow.
So she acknowledged that.
So you treated her emotionally.
Yes.
Really. And that's called the NLP.
Neuro-linguistic programming. So it's emotionally and behaviorally. And really changing a perception on what is it that's going on around her, with her. So what does it mean? And how can she be herself in this changed environment that she found herself without her wanting to be there, but she had to be there because she loved him still, but felt guilty that she doesn't kind of anymore.
And by going to you prior to him passing away to get a better or different perspective, when he finally did pass away, it probably helped her at that same time not to feel so much more of what she would have felt if she hadn't been to you. It probably eased a lot of those burdens for her.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's so true. Yeah. Because I think that she decided to keep him in the house. And while we were working together, she hired help. She had to fire somebody who also was creating a lot of anguish. And she hired somebody else. From what I remember, I vaguely remember that.
Yeah.
So that was one case.
Yeah, well, and there's so many different scenarios. We always say that there's maybe somebody here that has Alzheimer's, but they're not going to be like anybody else that has Alzheimer's, right? Because they're a different personality and they have different signs and symptoms and behaviors, and it just, you've seen one with Alzheimer's, you've seen one with Alzheimer's, because you just can't really group it all together. And same thing with caregivers. Caregivers have their own set of definitions and values and the way that they see things, right? And that's why sometimes you see caregivers that sort of seem like they have it all together, and other caregivers that are just falling apart at the seams, and it's just because of how they do everything.
Yeah, she was falling apart. I had another patient whose caregiver was not falling apart, but it was a relief to him to bring her to me. With her, I did acupuncture.
Okay.
And that really helped her to relax. She had moments when she would be, there was Alzheimer also, so there was a moment she was completely lucid, and she would tell me wonderful stories from her life, and then all of a sudden she would not even recognize me or him, who we are. And acupuncture helped her to relax, because Alzheimer, like that kind of Alzheimer, can create a lot of fear.
Yes.
Because you kind of wake up and say, where am I?
Who am I?
Who are you?
Yeah.
And that helped her to relax. So I think they used to come to me for a year or so, and then they, I think, moved away. Or I think he also put her in the facility
But
like
that
Arden
makes
Courts.
sense, the relaxation, and then they can really have a different perspective even within themselves. This is so fascinating, and I want you to tell everybody that's listening or watching today how they can contact you if they'd like to talk with you, make an appointment, find out more about you. Please let them know.
Okay, so which camera is on me, left or
You're
right?
good, right there.
Okay, that one. Okay. So I'm Dr. Maya Sarkissian, and I am practicing locally in my clinic is in Boca Raton East. I also practice online, so I have the telemedicine room. What else? My phone number is 561-570-6292. I also have 800 number.
Okay.
It's 800-590-6292.
Website?
And website is Dr. Maya Clinic. Doctor spelled out, DOCTOR. DR also will get you there. So drmayaclinic.com. And there you will see that what I talk about is that your health depends on your emotions, hormones, digestion, nutrition. And that those are, main pillars.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much for being here today. I thoroughly enjoyed having you. You were so informative, and I'm sure helpful to so many people.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining in today. I hope you'll be back with us next week when we have another program for you every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And tune in with us on iHeartRadio or on the website caregiversolutions.info. Thank you. Take care. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teal. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions.